Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is 𝘗𝘰𝘧𝘪𝘭𝘦, and I'm the Director of College Planning, Education, and Training at MEFA. And tonight we have with us our guest presenter and expert on all things CSS Profile, Mike Goodwin, who is the Assistant Director of Financial Aid, Financial Services at Williams College. And we're going to have sort of a question and answer format for Mike. I know we have so many questions about the CSS profile as you're completing it, and we've been answering them at MEFA, but what better than to have a real expert who is using this all the time with students and families. So what I'll say is that I will be behind the scenes sort of managing the questions as they come in, and Mike will be answering them for us. And I am going to start myself by asking Mike a couple of overview questions, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty and the details. And this webinar will go from 6:30 to 7:30. And if by chance your question doesn't get answered, please know that we will compile the answers for anything we're not able to cover, and we'll send that out to you tomorrow when we send the recording. So does that sound good, Mike? Do you want to say a few words about your job in Williams or anything?
Sure. Yeah. So I work at Williams College. Those who don't know or familiar with Williams, we're right in that corner of Vermont and New York, as far northwest as you can get. Literally a mile from Vermont and 5 miles from the New York border. It's a premier liberal arts college. I work with families primarily. I work with a lot of student athlete families, and do a lot of work with obviously the CSS profile, because we use that for all our aid that we give out, and do a lot of work with our net price calculator, which we'll talk about later on, but helping families get a sense of an estimate of what they can expect when they apply for financial aid and what the cost might be.
So, Mike, someone has made a comment, and I just want to make sure it's okay, that there's too much echo. So I guess I just want to, I don't know, but I'm going to see if that person could let us know. Is that still the case? And I'll look in the Q&A and see if I can.
I try using AirPods, so I don't know if that would make a difference or not.
Okay, a couple of people said all good here. And no echo sounds okay.
Okay.
So I think we're going to have to go with that. And all right, thanks so much. So, Mike, I'd say to start, can you just let people know what is the CSS profile form?
Sure. Yep. So when you're applying to colleges, your students will fill out the Common App. The Common App is the widely used tool that you fill out one application, it goes to all colleges. Common App is put together by a company called College Board. College Board also puts out what's called the CSS profile. There are two applications you'll fill out when applying for financial aid for colleges. One is the FAFSA, which everyone's familiar with, and if you follow the news, follow all the ups and downs with that last year and the trials they went through. And the other one is the CSS profile. The profile is used by 300 or more colleges, universities across the country, maybe different agencies, to actually get a profile of your family's, I call it your family's economy, your family's income, their assets, and the different ways for students, for a college to get a sense of what can a family afford on applying to college. It's there's a CSS profile, and some colleges use what's called a CS profile light, which is a shorter version. But again, it's just used to get a better sense of your family's economic income and assets in order for them to give the best aid package they can give.
Thank you. And how would a student or family know whether their college requires the CSS profile or just the FAFSA?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best place to start is right on your college's website. The schools that your students are looking at, go to their website and then look at their financial aid website, web pages, and that should tell you that they are a CSS profile school or just a FAFSA school or both. Most schools would be both if they do have the CSS profile. They're going to want the FAFSA as well, and we'll talk about why probably later on when we talk about federal aid. Also, if you go to the CSS profile website and there's a page that you can go onto and you can search the schools, and if your school is there, it means that they accept the CSS profile.
And you brought up a good point there, as far as schools, colleges being able to make the best award, and especially given that the FAFSA is delayed this year. Can you talk a little bit about that and the CSS profile being open and for early decision, early action type programs, how people can get started fairly early on their application?
So the CSS profile is used primarily by private institutions, private colleges, who have the endowment, who have that money that they use to give out their institutional aid. But having said that, there are some universities who rely on the CSS profile as well in order to get, again, that best look at a family's income and assets. I'm sorry, Julie, I'm talking and I totally forgot what you asked me now.
Well, just more about the fact that they can kind of get started on that right away.
Oh, yes, thank you.
FAFSA isn't available. Yeah.
So the FAFSA will not be available until December 1st, and they're still kind of working through some of the issues from last year. If you're applying early decision to a school that requires the CSS profile, it's a good way to get started and start filling it out now. When, much like the FAFSA, when you fill out the CSS profile, your student can list the schools they wanted to go to. If they're applying early decision, the idea is that they're applying to one school, and that's the school they're going to go to if they're accepted. So they, on their profile, should just be that one college. What's nice with the profile is you can go back in and add schools. The cost for the profile is $25 per school and then $16 per additional college that you add to that. However, if a family has adjusted gross income of less than $100,000, then those fees will be waived, which is great. If your student had a SAT waiver, fee waiver, and they took the SATs, you're automatically waived. And if you meet the means test regarding your income, it'll be waived as well. So a lot of ways for families who are concerned about that cost of filling out the form. Depending where your income is at, for the most part, many families are going to see that this fee is going to be waived.
Before I get into, I see we have a lot of questions lining up, which is great. But one of the questions we get a lot, because it's different than the FAFSA, where with the FAFSA, if students' parents are divorced or separated, it's, one parent, the one who has provided the most support, files that FAFSA with the student. And then the other parent does not have to file the FAFSA, but it's different with the CSS profile. So can you talk about how to complete the CSS profile if the student has parents who are divorced or separated?
Certainly, yep. And this is one that we deal with this regularly with families. So when you fill out the FAFSA, if parents are divorced or separated, and the parent who offers the most support, so say is remarried, that step-parent is expected to provide their income information as well, because it's the household that's responsible for paying for the student's costs. CSS profile is different in that if a parents are separated or divorced, the philosophy is you can divorce your spouse, but you can't divorce your child. So when a student fills out the CSS profile, they will fill it out with their custodial parent, or what profile likes to do is keep it similar to the FAFSA. So they'll fill it out with the parent who offers the most financial support. And they'll all be under the student's College Board ID number, what they'll need to do when they start their form. The other parent will be asked, or we call it the non-custodial parent. That parent will be asked to create their own College Board ID number, and they'll fill in their information separately. So say the parent who the student's filling out the form with is remarried, they'll share their household income, so their and their spouses, but you later on will upload your W-2s and such. So what a college will do is separate the parent from the step parent. So the step parent won't be used in the calculations. And so they will look at just the parent's income. They'll redo the taxes to make sure they're just looking at that parent's information. The non-custodial parent, the same thing. They'll just look at their income itself. What's interesting about College Board is that, excuse me, the CSS profile is that, remember, each parent's going to have their own College Board ID number. That's important because they're very pay a lot of attention to keeping each parent's information separate. So this child connects the two, the student connects the two, but one parent cannot see the other parent's income and vice versa, or assets. So that's why you have separate custodial parent, non-custodial parent.
That's very, very helpful. All right, so one of the questions, actually, we have a couple of questions on this topic because we know this is something that's different than the FAFSA, is the CSS profile asks questions about the home that you live in, your primary residence. So the questions are coming in of how do we determine the value of our home to put on the CSS profile?
Sure, yep. So the easy answer is Zillow.com. If you're not sure what your home is worth, go to Zillow and put your address in, and it should give you, if it's in the system, which most of our houses are, it'll come up with your home value. So now you have your home value. Then look at your mortgage statements and see what your balance is and what you owe on it. And that's going to be what the debt, what you owe in your home. So that's the easiest way to do that. We don't want parents to go out and have their houses appraised and pay the money to do all that. For most schools using the CSS profile, we'll use a formula that will, if your equity, so what the house is valued at, what you owe, what is in between is the home equity. If that equity is greater than the family's income, then they'll use a formula to just base it on a percentage of your income as opposed to the whole equity. So say you have $500,000 in home equity, which is an asset, but your income is only $110 annually, then they'll use a percentage of your income in place of that home equity. Check with your colleges, ask them if you have questions about that, ask them how they treat home equity if they're using the CSS profile. Because we don't want to punish families who have been paying their mortgages for 10, 15, 20 years and then punish them for having such equity built up.
That's great. Now we have a question from a grandfather. And so I'll quickly read the question and then you can talk about it from the CSS perspective. He learned that because this grandfather is a guardian and not a parent, that the college said that the student should fill out the CSS profile independently. Now, I believe that's true on the FAFSA, but can you talk about how you would like guardians to fill out the CSS profile? Like in this case, these grandparents that the student lives with. And also, can you explain, do you think that different colleges treat that a little bit differently? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just thinking that. So yeah, so to answer the last question first, check with your college that your student is applying to and ask them how best to fill out the CSS profile if you are indeed a guardian of your student. The profile is designed for the parents to fill out, but we know there are a lot of situations. In fact, I just had a conversation last week with a family who the student lives with their aunt and uncle because mom is incarcerated and dad cannot be found. So for our needs, the student would fill out the CSS profile as an independent student. The colleges will make that determination if the student is independent. So there's some forms you'll fill out. One's called a non-custodial parent waiver form. And so in our case at Williams, we would ask the student to fill out that form. And in that form, there's this area where they can write a small narrative explaining their situation, that my parent is incarcerated, that my father left when I was a young age, whatever that reason might be. Then the college will make that determination. What's helpful with that is that when they fill out the FAFSA, the federal government's going to want verification on that. And what's nice is that if they can do that through the profile and they have that information, then the college will make that determination regarding their FAFSA that the student is independent for these reasons, for federal grant. Part of the non-custodial waiver form is that it may ask for 1 or 2 third-party letters. So a guidance counselor, clergy, friend of the family, someone who can just verify that indeed the student does live with their guardians, grandparents, aunt and uncles, whoever that might be. Any court documents you have for that as well would be great. This is different than being adopted. If the student is adopted by the grandparents, aunt and uncles, then they're seen as legal parents in that case, and they would be asked to contribute and so on. Even in those cases, have a conversation with their college and their financial aid office to get clarity on what they're looking for that.
That's great. So here's another good question we've been getting a lot lately. I have a student in college now, a sophomore, and twin daughters who will attend college next year. So I'll have 3 in college for a few years. Will this be considered for my financial aid?
Sure. Yep. So again, most, a lot of these answers will be double check the college to make sure how they treat situations like this. Most of the CSS profile schools you'll be working with or applying to will look at that, and they will give you credit for having 2 in college or 3 in college. So what that means is they'll come up with your parent contribution, and then they will have a set reduction that they will add, addressing the fact that you have multiple students in college. And different schools do it differently. For the most part, you see, I would think if you have your contribution, it'll drop down to 60% if you have 2 in college. And then if you have 3 in college, it may drop to 50 or 45%. Every college will have their own percentage that they use. But it's a good thing to ask. And I think because what's nice about the profile is that they're looking at, again, a whole profile of your family. And so you want to make sure when you have multiple children that you're including them and when you're filling out the form, sharing that they're in college, where they're going to college. Some colleges will ask your student to submit a sibling verification form. So basically they're going to ask for, so say the sibling goes to Williams, the student goes to Williams, but the sibling goes to Framingham State College. They may ask Framingham State College to their financial aid office to sign a form saying, yes, the sibling is enrolled. Yes, they're receiving aid. So now Williams can verify that there is a sibling in school. So that's part of that process. But for the most part, schools using CSS Profile are going to recognizing having multiple in college. On the FAFSA, just to kind of touch about that quickly, one of the big changes with the FAFSA is that they did not count having multiple siblings in college at the same time, having 2 or 3 more students in college at once. That is just because FAFSA is looking at giving the most federal grant aid to that individual student. That doesn't mean that the colleges that are not applying to won't still take that in consideration when they're giving out their aid and such. So I think a lot of was made to do about FAFSA not recognizing 2 in college. Colleges will make those decisions because remember, they want your student on their campus. And so they'll find ways to help you in the situations like that.
That's great. Now, this question is about the special circumstances section of the application, which of course is great because there's nothing like that on the FAFSA. So can you speak to that? And particularly if someone has new health issues, medical bills, how should people utilize that section?
Sure. So as you're filling out the CSS profile, you're going to find there's a lot of questions that just the answers are numbers. And you're just doing numbers. And it's going to feel like your whole life is just reduced to dollar amounts and numbers. What's nice about the special circumstances box is that it's a place where you can share your story. And there's a number of characters, like so many words, but it's enough that you can put your story in there. And that's where you share that I lost my job this past year. My husband is expecting a pay decrease in 6 months because his job's changing. We're taking care of an ailing grandparent who now lives with us. I send money to my um, uh, aging parent, in another state. It's a way for you to share your story with the colleges and in an area where you want them to take these things into consideration. Oftentimes, it opens a door for appeals. So if you share ahead of time that, you've had a job loss, because remember, we're looking at prior year. If you're applying the CSS profile for next year, 25, 26, you'll be using your 2023 tax return. But maybe you lost your job in 2024. So now here's a chance for you to share in the special circumstances area that you had this job loss, or there's an illness in a family, or we had, large medical bills because of a skiing accident, or whatever it might be in your life story, part of your profile that you can share this with these colleges, and they will take that consideration.
That's great. Someone is asking, do you submit the CSS profile every year? And the second part of their question is, if a younger child is attending in a year or two, how do they know you have more than one in college?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Let's say I guess in that case, if you're not submitting it every year, how would you know that there's another child in college if
Yep.
they were coming up?
So, yep. So some colleges I know ask for the CSS profile upfront that first year, and they're um, assuming that your income is going to stay the same each year for the 4 years that your students at that college. So it stays the same. If there are any major changes, my guess is you're still filling out the FAFSA, and that might raise some flags or something. If your school does that, then again, special circumstances is the place to share that, Susie has a brother who will be starting her junior year, and that kind of gives them a heads up. But you can always reach out to school and share with them. Most cases, your colleges are going to ask you to reapply each year because we know things happen with some regularity. Either your income goes up because you've gotten a promotion, or it's changed because of job changes or changes in your workplace. So they want to keep an up-to-date profile each year. You might win the lottery. We're going to want to know that too. So more cases than not, the college is going to ask you to apply each year.
That's great. And this really goes to say a divorced or separated parent situation where both parents may be required to report. But what if a student has not had contact or financial support from a parent for 5 years? Can you talk about the waiver form, the ability to waive that requirement?
Yep. So the waiver form you can find online. You can find it on the CSS Profile website. Your college may have one on their website. Some colleges have their own designed non-custodial waiver, parent waiver form. So you might want to look for that if this is the situation you're in. Often cases, student may not have ever met the other parent. Their custodial parent was never married. It could be a situation where there's violence in the household and it's not safe for the student or their custodial parent to reach out to the other parent. All kinds of reasons that happen in life. So non-custodial waiver form allows you to ask for have this parent waived because of these reasons. The first page of the waiver form asks for that parent's name, address, email, phone number, any information you may have. Many cases you won't have any information. If that's how it is, you just leave those blank or put NA.
Yep.
The second page asks, when's the last time you've had contact with that parent? I've had some of these waivers who the student has Christmas every year with that parent, or they have text messages every 3 months from that parent, but they haven't seen him in 5 years. But the college wants to have that information. And then that third page is where you share that narrative, that story. Many colleges will put a timeline. If you've not had contact 5 years or more with this parent, then they may decide to waive. It's situations where I've not seen this parent in 5 years, but he calls every year Christmas on my birthday for a short conversation. And that's where colleges they'll have committees and they'll discuss, okay, do we still want to waive this parent or not? If a student has regular contact with the parent that they're considering waiving, but the parent has not given any financial support to the family, colleges are still going to want that parent's information. Because remember, you can divorce a parent, but not your student. And so they're probably going to still be looking for that information. It may be a case of that parent just doesn't make the income to be able to support the student. That's going to be reflective when they go through his information and see that the money's not there. There is, again, another philosophy that an unwillingness to pay doesn't automatically waive a parent. So again, these are conversations to have with your schools. This is where these special circumstances boxes come in. My experience, again, at Williams and talking to colleagues at other colleges, we understand, we've heard so many stories. We have a threshold that we know that, yep, it's not worth, we can't contact this parent. It's not worth trying to get this parents in another country. Like, there are thresholds that we'll use to know that, it's not worth our time and effort trying to get information about this parent.
What if a non-custodial parent lives in another country? Does he need to create a CSS profile? And what if that person doesn't support the child financially?
Sure. Yep. Oh, that's a great question. And let's break it into two parts if we can. So one of the things that's different of the CSS profile from FAFSA is FAFSA only gives out federal aid to domestic students, and then some undocumented students and such. The CSS profile can be filled out by international families. So if you have a student who lives in the United States with their custodial parent in the United States, but the other parent lives in France, they can still fill out the CSS profile. Same thing, they'd create their own College Board ID number. They'd fill out their information and send it along. And colleges are designed to have the ability to look at, and the profile does this for us, to look at international conversion rates and currency rates and such. If that parent is a parent who lives international, who's not contributing, who's not part of the student's life and such, again, you'll share that in your special circumstances. You'll share that in the waiver form, and colleges will make a decision based on that, how much they want to pursue it. Yeah, a parent living internationally, they still can fill out the CSS profile. It's still available to them. And again, these happen a lot, but my experience is that parents who are divorced or separated, domestic or international, both parents still contribute. It happens. It all really is based on the relationship the student has with that parent. I would just caution all of you out there, if it's a bad divorce and one parent can't talk to the other parent, there's still ways to work through that, and we'll work with families on that. But our goal is never to keep the student in the middle of all that either. So we'll work directly with parents, because parents want to contribute, but we don't want to be involved with divorce decisions or court decisions. We'll come up with the one parent, household A, what they should contribute. We'll come up with household B, what they should contribute. Add together, that's the parent contribution. It's up to the parents to decide how that gets paid.
Thank you. I'm going to group a number of questions together here that all I think you can address, which is that on the CSS profile, there are lots of places where it asks you to estimate. So a couple of examples different people gave are, how do I fill out the cost of the college in question for the sibling where I don't know where they'll be attending? That's one place a parent might need to estimate. Other places, just estimating future income for the parent or the student. And one parent said, I don't know if my student will get a summer job next year. So how would you address all of those questions about how do you estimate? How do you feel good about completing this form and doing the best you can with estimates?
Yeah, and I think that's just that you do the best you can. I think there are situations you'll have those answers and you'll be able to fill them out. Others, maybe not. I think if you have twins who are applying to college and you don't know what the other twins, aid's going to look like, financial aid will look like, or your costs will be, you do your best. That's where calculators, net price calculators can be very helpful because you'll be looking at their costs just like you're looking at the other students' costs. What a student will make the following year. My advice is just whatever they made this past year, use that same number again. Like we're not expecting students to be getting raises in summer jobs, and maybe they get a better summer job, that's fine. We'll see that when they apply that corresponding year and we have that information. What's nice about the profile is that it gives us, again, I keep using this term, a profile of the family. So you're using your 2023 tax return, tax information. We call that prior year. If you're applying for the fall of 2025, we're looking at 2023 because those tax returns should be completed. The form asks you to give us a sense of your income for 2024. And so right now we're in October. You should have a pretty good sense looking at your W-2s where you're at, and you would give an estimate on that as best you can. And then it asks you for 2025. What they're really just kind of looking for is, are you seeing any obstacles between now and then regarding your income? In most cases, it's just going to be the same numbers each year, but they're just trying to develop this profile of your family so they can, again, give the best aid that they can give that's reflective of your need, your demonstrated need. I know I'm working with a mother right now on this, and she gets very anxious about, and like, don't worry. I tell her, don't worry about it. Colleges aren't using that to determine your aid for fall of 2025. Again, they're just trying to get that full picture of that. The other question, Julie, you may have this, but I know it's probably going to come up because it usually does when we do this. It asks a family, what do you expect to pay for college?
I was just going to ask that because
exactly.
we have it.
Yep.
$1 million question.
Yep. And I'll tell you, I filled out the profile, I don't know, a dozen times. I work with families filling them out. And I hate that question. They hate that question. I wish they would just get rid of that question. But the profile is trying to look at is, what are you hoping to pay for college? I know, the 100 people on the Zoom tonight all know we all want to pay zero, right? We want to pay at least the amount that we can pay. My advice is always be reasonable with that. Think about what you can afford within your budget, what you think cost of college should be, and that's the number you put in. There is this fear that if you put in more than what you'd be eligible for, colleges will use it. I trust my colleagues to not do that. Like they're going to come up with that number that is right for you. If you underreport it, then they'll look at it negatively. No, because we all know people want to pay the least amount. Again, and I can't harp on this enough, every college has to have a net price calculator on their website. So if you go to their website, you just search for net price calculator, or just, I'll use Framingham State College, University net price calculator. It'll pop up for you. And then you can put your information into the calculator and it'll give you the estimated cost for you for that year. Do that, plop that number in there. If you don't like that number, use a different number. But if you're looking for a real answer for that, the calculators are a great tool to use to kind of get a sense of what you can expect your costs to be.
This is a different type of question, just a technical. If a question on the profile asks for a line that has a blank on your 1040, should you leave it blank or put a 0?
Always put zeros. I think the profile is designed to be intuitive. That's why you answer so many questions in the front part of it, and some seem repetitive, but it's just so the rest of the skip logic, it's called, can make the profile of application easier. FAFSA is the same. Colleges don't like blank spaces. Always put a 0 if the answer is 0, because then we know that you've seen that and you've answered it. If you don't have a value there or a number there, then the question comes, did they mean to put something there? And then they're gonna have to follow up with you through an email or such. So my advice is always put a 0. Don't leave any blanks.
And this person asked 3 questions, so we'll have to remember them.
Oh, good.
But they're all good ones. If a student is applying to early action and regular decision, is it all right to send CSS profile in at the same time for all schools? That's number 1. So that's kind of an easy one, I think. I'll let you answer that, and then I'll ask the other 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah.
Yeah. So that I guess I'll even answer that, right? That yes, it is fine for early action, regular decision. You send in the profile, and they can all be on there together, right?
Yep.
So then the next question, which I think maybe will allow you to talk a little bit about sending tax returns and those different processes at different colleges. Do I need to upload the tax forms individually to each college? That's the second question.
Sure. So no, that's a great question. So much like Common App, which goes to all the colleges the student is applying to, CSS Profile will go to all the schools that you list. When you submit the CSS profile, you're done. You use your College Board ID as a signature. Boom, it's off and sent. The student has a College Board CSS profile dashboard that they should be looking at, and the dashboard will indicate to you, we've received your information. Now we need you to upload your tax documents to what's called IDOC, which is the Internet Institutional Document Service. So what you're going to do is upload your 2023 tax return, all the schedules in your W-2s. If you own a business, so if you have a partnership or a sole proprietor, then you're going to have Schedule E. And then with that, it will see that, and Schedule E tells you if you have what's called a 1065, Form 1065, which means you have a partnership, or an 1120S, which means you're a sole proprietor, or an 1120, which is a tax form used for privately owned businesses. Colleges are going to want you to upload those as well. What happens is that family will upload the tax return, the Schedule E, not their business tax returns. And so what happens is that slows the process down because they're going to have to email you now to get those. So when you're uploading this information, you own a business, 1065, 1120S, 1120, and your K1s. Those of you who own businesses, you know what I'm talking about. If not, talk to your accountants. But the K1s are kind of like the W-2s for those businesses, and it tells us how much money you receive for them. But the IDOC it's a great way to share your information with us, and we can verify everything you've reported on the CSS profile. So if you make a mistake, we'll correct it on our end. And mistakes are easy, without a doubt. I've had families put too many zeros in for their income, and we were able to say, no, you didn't make $7 million, you made $70,000. And that's why that's all important to use and to pay attention to what schools are looking for. Oftentimes, schools will have their own dashboard or checklist for your student who's applying there, and they should keep an eye on that as well, because that's where the school is going to say, we're looking for your your business form 1065 or Schedule C. IDOC won't remind you that you're missing something, because if you upload your tax return, you could upload a tax return from 1973. It won't make a difference. It just knows you uploaded a tax return. Colleges will tell you when things are missing, and try to get you to get these forms to them. And they will always ask you to upload them to IDOC. Because what happens is that College Board takes the information, files it all in a way that we can understand it, so we get it, it's all sorted out, and we can do our process.
Now, so this question is, the last question there is it okay to just answer the required questions? If something is not required, what would you say?
I don't know. It's kind of like, do I do extra credit with my homework? I think sometimes these non-required questions can help you. I know some colleges will add questions to the CSS profile. They'll ask what kind of car do you drive and such. Again, it's like, leaving a blank as opposed to putting a zero. If you don't answer it, they may come back for clarification. My advice is always answer all the questions. And if you have concerns about tax implications or how it's going to reflect, talk to your accountant, or if you have a financial planner, talk to someone who might be able to clarify the question for you. And I will tell you that it's tempting to not answer questions or tempting not to answer them fully. Colleges have a way of finding these out. I will just tell you that we do so many of these. We know if something's missing or if we need clarification. So my advice is always just fill it out fully and don't leave anything to chance.
That's great. There's a question. Let me see if I can find this again. So this kind of addresses a few other things too, and a little bit what you were talking about, Mike. This question is, the CSS profile asks for parents' highest level of education. It's not a required question. Can a parent's level of education negatively impact the amount of aid that's available? And anyway, so I guess that goes to what you were just saying, that
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
people
no.
shouldn't try to speculate, right? Yes.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's don't certainly. I've had people who don't answer that as well. That it should have no impact on any aid eligibility that you have. Again, going back to the idea that colleges are trying to get that profile. So what is this family? What are they made up of? It's just a demographic question that they use for reasons other than, and not bad reasons or nefarious reasons, just to kind of give that full picture of a family, but should not impact your aid eligibility.
That's great. And then can you talk about how to value a small business?
Yeah, no, that's my wife owns a small business and we have that conversation all the time. I think, again, if you work with an accountant on your business, that's probably the best place to go to get their take on that. When we're looking at a value of a business, what we're looking for is, do you own machinery? Do you own property? Are there assets within the business that if you sold it, you'd get a value for? So I'm working now with a mom who has a coaching business, counseling business, life counseling, coaching business, and she works out of her house and she's got a laptop. She doesn't really have any asset within the business, so that would be a zero value, zero debt on that business. If you have business savings, so say you don't have a lot of assets, but you throw your business, you've been saving $50,000 in your business account to use to grow, then you have an asset. How you use that asset when you sell the business is going to be up to you. Do you keep the 50,000 or do you sell it with the business if you move it on to somebody else so they have that money to grow? That's where an accountant comes into play to get that advice from them. Because I know people would look at it differently. If you have $50,000 in a business account, the interest you're accruing is going to show up in your personal tax return. So if you say you have $10 in your personal savings account, but you've got $300 in interest earned off of savings accounts, colleges may ask questions like, well, where's that money coming from? And it could be a business account. So these are things just to keep in mind when you're answering the questions about, what is my value? What is it worth? And what do I have for an asset to share?
Thank you. All right, we have a couple more good ones and we still have about 10 minutes left. Can you talk about retirement income? Is it exempt, but why are the questions asked?
Yep. So again, broken record profile, looking at a profile. So if you have money in your 401k, 403b, IRAs, whatever your retirement is, pension, it asks you to share the amount. the CSS Profile Lite, I don't think it asks that anymore. But for my purpose, I'll tell you personally why I like it is that there's a question about your investments. How much do you have in personal investments? And oftentimes parents will include their retirement in that amount. So I've had families who say they have $1 million in investments, but their income isn't really reflective of that. So I'll ask them, do you have $1 million in outside non-qualified investments, or is this retirement qualified investments? And their eyes will open up and they're like, oh my God, no, that's retirement. Colleges will not use your retirement investments as an asset. That's your money you've saved for retirement. So we're not going to count that or use that. But for me, it's always a helpful tool to kind of make sure we're differentiating between the two. So maybe out of that $1 million, 200,000 was outside investments and 800 is retirement. So now we can split that out and be fair to the families. So we will not use retirement assets in the calculations. However, on your W-2, box 12 of your W-2, there are coded amounts that tell us how much you're putting in unearned income towards your retirement. So maybe you make $130,000, but 20,000 of that income is untaxed earnings that go in towards your retirement. So your W-2 box 1 is going to say you made $110,000, and that box 12 coded number is going to say 20,000 that goes towards retirement. We are going to count that as income. So where your untaxed earnings going towards retirement will still be counted as income. Once it's in retirement, then that's an asset that we're not going to touch. And that can be confusing, especially when you're doing the calculator, because calculators will ask about untaxed benefits, and they're looking for that box 12. And there should be a little, like the CSS profile, as you fill it out, has little question marks that you'll click on. It'll explain what they're looking for. So there will be a question about untaxed earnings or untaxed benefits. Click that little question mark. It'll tell you W-2, box 12, letters D, E, F, G, H, S. Those are the codes they're looking for to include. And again, when you upload everything to the IDOC system, we look at that and we'll correct that if we need to. That's a long answer to a simple question, and I apologize, but that's one that catches families quite often. If it's a retirement asset, we're not going to count it, but we still want to know just so we can get a full picture of your family's profile.
Thank you. I am a joint owner on my students' grandparents' bank accounts. I'm the power of attorney. Do I report this on the CSS profile and then explain in special circumstances?
The parent is a joint owner of the grandparents' account. If it's the grandparents' account, I would not think you have to count that because it's not your account. You're just the overseer of that. So I wouldn't count that. And I probably wouldn't even ask that question. I think just I would not include that. I don't know, Jill, if you have any questions about 529 college savings plans, but just to touch upon that, that is an investment. So when you report your investments, you want to include those 529 college savings plans. Again, however, if the grandparents own that 529 plan that they're saving for Susie to go to college, that plan belongs to the grandparents. So you would not count that as your investment or the student's investments. Different colleges look at that differently, but this is my understanding of the policy.
Mm-hmm.
So just because we're talking about grandparents and overseeing, if you're overseeing a 529 plan for Susie, then that becomes a little bit more ickier because you are connected to that 529 for the student and such. But again, accountants, people who have an understanding of how this all would work is a good resource to use.
That's great. And this is kind of a unique question, but we get things like this fairly often. This person owns an international property, but legally the relatives back home have the right to use it. They pay the taxes, they live there. is this something that needs to be reported?
If you own the property, it needs to be reported. So you report your house, your value of the home, where you live, if you own a home, the debt on the home. And then there's other real estate. So this would be other real estate. Um, Colleges are gonna want to know, okay, you have family members who are living there. Are they paying you rent? Are they like, and again, this is with special circumstances is important to kind of um, hash that out. But I would report it because it'll come out one way or the other, um, and then work with the colleges and see how they would treat that. Oftentimes we get appeals like that.
And Mike, just hearing you answer that and some of the other things you've said so far, I feel like you tell me if this is correct as kind of a general answer to a lot of things. If there's a question about it and you report it, and you can always explain it in the special circumstances box, that's sometimes a nice way to address things that you don't know whether to report or not, right? Is to
Yep. Yep.
be able to use that box to tell your story, would you
Sure.
say?
Yep. Yep. And I'll step out if I can, take off my professional hat and put on my parent hat. My wife and I put two daughters to and through college, and those parents starting out, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's wonderful. You'll appreciate it. Um, Being able to build a relationship with your financial aid office is important. So this is a situation where you may not know the correct answer to it, and you're almost afraid to ask the question. But if you can build a relationship with the office and have a conversation with them, they're going to remember you sophomore year, junior year, senior year, when other things come up that really do need to be addressed. So I think, take advantage of that. I can't promise all colleges are going to be as wonderful as we are. But I know a lot of colleagues, I have a lot of colleagues in the field, and we talk about this a lot, that having a relationship with their office is important. Really quick story. My daughter went to Wheaton, and we were going through, I was changing jobs. My wife was starting a business. Years later, I met the director of financial aid from Wheaton. She was retiring, and said my daughter had gone there. She saw my last name. She goes, "Oh, your daughter's Eleanor." I'm like, "No, my wife's Eleanor. My daughter's Kelsey." Her relationship was with my wife because my wife was the one who asked the questions and built the relationship and did everything. And the fact that she remembered her probably says a lot about us as a family, but more importantly about her as a professional. And that's what we do. We want to build these relationships with families because we know it's a lot we're asking of you, a lot of private information, and we know college costs a lot. So we really want to help you as best we can with those costs and understanding these costs and what we're asking for.
So I'm going to ask this one because I think we only have time for a few more, but this is a little bit different in that it's about addresses. And, this is kind of a technical piece. So this family asks, is it okay if the student's address is different on the CSS profile versus the Common App? If the parents are divorced and have joint custody, where one address, is there a place where one address may be more beneficial in terms of chances of admission? I mean, it's kind of a loaded big question, but I guess we do see that, right? With parents putting different addresses
I'd say ideally having one address for everything makes the most sense and it helps colleges. I suspect that the address that the student uses on the Common App is going to be the address that will go into the student's college record if she's accepted. If there's any need for, the college record, college address of record, which is in her formal account for the college, is going to be tied into financial aid. I would say I would try to, and I'm saying there are situations that may call for this, but try to be as consistent as you can. And at least when the student is admitted to the college, have the student correct the address with the offices, which would be the main college office and her account record, the registrar's office, and the financial aid office. So we're sending the bills. The bills are electronic now, but we just want to make sure we have the right information. But I do have families who are moving, who are in flux, and that happens. But I think having at least the colleges on record, the address on record is going to be the most important and then clarifying with their financial aid office when because again, you apply every year, you can always correct that.
All right, I'm going to ask one more specific question here and then a more general one, and I think that might be all we'll be able to take. What if we're divorced and we still own the house together, although one parent and the kids live in the house and the mortgage is in the other parent's name and they're both paying for it? How would you say that should be reported?
Sure. So, to kind of take a step behind that, if the family's recently divorced, which sounds like this might be, and remember looking at 2023 tax returns. So if you filed married on that tax return, but now in 2025, you're divorced or separated, what we'll do is we'll take that tax return, divvy up the W-2s if there's a W-2 for each of them, and just split everything down the middle. We'll prorate the taxes to extricate both parents so you both have your own profile, right? Both parents, if they're separated, both parents will still need to do a CSS profile. If both parents are divorced or separated, but still living in the same household, most colleges are going to treat you as married and put together as one household because you're sharing expenses and all the other allowances that would give you within that household. If you're divorced and one parent's still in the house, you still own the house, you're going to share that in special circumstances. We'll split the value of the home in half, the debt in half, unless we have other information to share differently, and just separate that out. But by doing that, the parent who no longer lives in the house and maybe is renting someplace is getting all these protection allowances for having his own household, or having their own household, I should say, because that's just being fair to both parents. So yeah, so we'll address that long as you point it out to us.
Great. And the last question I'm going to ask is, someone said they didn't realize they could call the college. They could call the colleges to ask some of these questions. And they're asking, how do you do that? What's the best way to reach out to a college, and when and how and all of that?
Sure, yeah. I think, one thing we talk to families about is if it's, and this is the same with the FAFSA, if it's a FAFSA question, if it's, it's not working for me, or I'm trying to go forward and it's not working. If it's a technical issue, deal with College Board, deal with studentaid.gov, deal with the entities themselves. If it's a question about treatment, like how would a school treat this, or how should I report this information, and you've used the little question icons that tell you what we're looking for, and you still struggle with that, then an email to the financial aid office is a great way to introduce yourself and just say, I'm struggling with this question. How best should I do that? And then, the schools will answer it. 90% of us are all consistent how we treat things, but we also have our own little idiosyncrasies how we do things. So I think, reach out to the school and figuring that out. I think, what I would caution any family on is, emailing every day or trying to call every day or multiple times a day to fill these out. The idea is that you should be able to do these on your, they're designed that family can do these on their own. And I know that's an unfair statement because we're joking today about both the profile and the FAFSA are really designed for a family of 4, married, 2 parents, 2 kids, and everything else. It seems to be like a workaround. So we're all going to have situations that are unique to us, and that's great. That's wonderful. The what you need to do is when you just can't come up with an answer, reach out to the office and they'll be willing to help, because that's really what we are there for. And we want to make sure, and customer service is a big part of our job. And if we don't have an answer, we'll do our best to find that answer for you.
That's great. So it is 7:33. And there are some questions that we haven't been able to answer, but I will take those back and we will work on getting some answers and send that out to respond. I don't know, Mike, you gave a lot of sort of general wisdom in between and within some of your answers. Any last words about, you know, to the parents who are and students who are sitting down and doing this form now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So a couple things. One, that I would be in trouble if I didn't share that, along with my job and what I do at Williams, I also co-chair an organization called FAFSA Day. So I co-chair with a colleague of Julie's at MEFA. We've been doing this for years, and we work with volunteers from different colleges, and we have a number of FAFSA Day nights where people can join in, and someone will help you fill out the FAFSA. It really is FAFSA focused, but we also have a FAFSAday@gmail.com that I manage. So if you have questions about the CSS profile, by all means, reach out there and we can help with that. FAFSA Day really is FAFSA focused because a lot of our volunteers don't work with the CSS profile. But FAFSAday@gmail.com is a place to go with those questions. In terms of advice, sit back, take a deep breath, answer each question one at a time. Do not rush through it. Do not fret about it. Remember that you are one of thousands and thousands and thousands and even more thousands of families who are filling this out. If you make a mistake, you're going to be one of thousands and thousands and more thousands of people who made a mistake. That's fine. We know that. And that's why their systems are put in place, like uploading your tax returns to us and such. We'll find ways to verify, and we'll reach out if we have questions. But just don't overthink. Just answer the questions and do your best. That's all we ask of families. Don't be afraid of it. Colleges want to help. We're not here to try to get money out of you. We're trying to give money to you. Some schools are more restricted what they can give than others, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to find ways to help as best we can. So just have faith in the system. Take a deep breath, maybe a glass of wine, and go question by question and fill it out.
That's great. Thank you. So thank you, Mike, and thank you all for the great questions. And I'm sure your questions were, you know, gave a lot of learnings to a lot of people. We'll answer the rest. We'll send those out when we do some follow-up, and continue to be in touch with either of us and connect with us if you have further questions in the whole process. So thank you very much. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thanks.